Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, dystopian science fiction and horror author, reader, and one of your hosts and co-founders of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today, as usual, from Kawana country at this stage.
And I am Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader, and your other co-founder and host, also coming to you from my usual place of Wurundjeri country in Victoria. And welcome to episode 40.
Yeah, so don't they say that podcast life begins at 40?
Well, with another significant birthday coming up, I'm going, move on. We've got way more to go.
Yeah, that's right. But yes, episode 40. So, and this would be technically besides our New Year's Eve special coming up, but this will be our last regular episode for the year, which is just amazing. So we'll obviously talk about that, the madness of putting together the podcast and the adventures we've had and all the fantastic experiences we've been able to enjoy. We'll obviously talk about that in the new year. But yes, the number 40 is a nice, beautiful number to round it off for 2021.
It is. Yeah, and look, we've got a fantastic interview later with author Gavin Fisher, originally a South African, but now calls himself an Australian, and some adventures that he's had, and he talks to us about his thriller Colour of Greed. So a little bit more about that later. But I believe that you might have some news for us, Darren.
Absolutely. So why don't we, episode 40, Australian Book Lovers podcast, time to jump into some news. And so for the news segment, I thought I'd like to begin this one with a few spotlights, of course, on none other than some fantastic new edition books to the website, and that means some new fantastic Australian authors that have been so kind as to list their work on the website. And that means for all the readers out there, especially at this time of the year, holidays, Christmas, summer on the beach, need something to read, stuck on trains, planes, back seat of the car, it's a great opportunity to have a good look and find that perfect book or seven for whatever event. Or
I like that, a perfect book or seven.
Yeah, definitely. Your escape button for wherever you are this festive season.
Yes.
So I'd like to start with a book called 7 by 7, and that's a science fiction book by author Kendall Carlson. Now 7 by 7 reads as follows. A global pandemic. Billions dead. Healthy young survivors are sent to the Australian outback. Their task? To feed what's left of civilization. Anarchy is rampant outside the capital, the most ruthless seizing scraps of the old world. Farming zones are said to be disease-free, patrolled and secure, yet people sometimes disappear. Wytek, a backpacker tortured by his past, Fong, a gifted drone specialist, Sienna, an impulsive outsider, and Harrison, a duplicitous cynic, arrive in a place where corruption is worse than any pestilence. Isolated and hunted, the survivors must question who they can trust in order to stay safe. Crossing the wrong people could mean death, or worse, but a hidden secret in the wilderness might change everything. 7 by 7 is the first book in a new Australian dystopian speculative fiction series. And once again, that was by author Kendall Carlson. So interesting premise to say the least.
Yeah, really interesting.
I mean, I think feeding civilization is always going to be the number one task through any sort of challenge to our existence here on the planet. And so definitely a good spine for a story.
Yeah, and it looks so much scope with the climate catastrophes that are happening all over the world for speculative fiction writers to, just pull those concepts apart a little bit. So yeah, really interesting.
Definitely, definitely. And speaking of interesting, we of course have in our fantasy section, Skullsinger, Chronicles of Argoth 2 by none other than author L.A. Webster. So Skullsinger reads as follows. A young widow with a musical gift that is truly magical. A conflict that will threaten her homeland and her soul. As a Scouse singer, Kahira Gelt delighted audience with her multi-voice performances. But she no longer has any reason to sing. Grieving the violent death of her husband, Bram, she is devastated by the sudden disappearance of his twin brother, Adric. Finding him is the only thing she can do for Bram now, but she little suspects what the cost to herself will be. Haunted by nightmares, Kahira combs the island of Algarth for any trace of her brother-in-law. Along the way, her love of singing re-emerges, bringing comfort amid pain, until a new and frightening power is unleashed within her, threatening those she holds dearest. But an even greater danger is brewing, a plot against Algarth itself. Kahira will face a terrible choice, risk her life, her soul, and her sanity in a battle against a monstrous enemy, or watch everything she loves disappear forever. And that is Skullsinger, Chronicles of Argoth 2 by L.A. Webster.
Which is fantastic. I'm going to say I've read that one, which is really good. And in fact, I think I've done a review, so perhaps we'll have a look at the end and put my review on the end of this episode.
I think we can do that, yes, with the powers of future technologies.
Yes.
Now, here's one I think that's going to be interesting, especially with, the travel bans or travel restrictions, shall we say, that we've all been experiencing. This new book can be found under our biographies and memoirs. It's by author Trevor Carroll, and this is called Crossing Continents with Top Deck.
Right.
And so this sounds like a really cool holiday read. So Top Deck double-deckers offered a revolutionary form of long-distance transport from the 70s to the 90s. The large British Ledeckers, I hope I pronounced that right, carried young adventurers vast distances through Southeast Asia, the Middle East and Australia in an innovative mode of no-frills adventure tourism. Employed by Top Deck as a double-decker bus driver in early 1977, Trevor Carroll conducted European tours for a year before he was set loose on his first overland tour, London to Kathmandu and return. A 3-week dash to Kathmandu had the tour stumbling onto the start of a civil war in Afghanistan, mixing in with soldiers and tanks on the road. Trevor describes his exciting and sometimes harrowing experiences on 6 overland trips as both driver and courier. Finally, he embarked on the massive 20-week Sydney to London tour in 1980 with its third and final leg aboard Casper and its 20 occupants crossing India, Pakistan, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Israel, Turkey, Greece, Yugoslavia and Italy, passing through 21 countries and 34,000 kilometres.
Wow.
Not only that, the author met his future wife, Hilda, on this final tour. So that is Crossing Continents with Top Deck by Trevor Carroll, found under our biographies and memoirs. But that sounds like a cracker of a read. And I love the idea of it set, set, it's a true story. But, being that it's, from the late 70s into that sort of early 80s period. Yeah. No mobile phones. No, technology was in infancy when it came to communication. So really, truly out on the road and at the mercy of what adventures lay waiting.
Yeah, untapped adventure.
So that, and if you've got a hunger and a thirst for travel and it just hasn't been able to be fulfilled yet, this could be that perfect read to get you ready for, as we are opening up, hopefully, and the world, and maybe be inspired and enjoy a frolic across the globe aboard a double-deck bus, which who could ask for more? Now, author Trevor Carroll wasn't just a bus driver, you see. He also was a police officer in Australia. Right. So he also has another book under our biography and memoir, and that is called The Cops, Not Just a Job. Trevor Carroll worked in the travel industry throughout Europe and the war-torn Middle East for 5 years before returning home to Australia and a job with the New South Wales Police Force. In 1982, his baptism of fire began in the cauldron of Cabramatta, as it was at that time. It was here that the seasoned Cabramatta cops taught him the job. After 3 busy years with cops that were not known to take a backward step, he was posted to the supposedly peaceful town of Forster. There, he worked alone more often than not, facing daily challenges. The Cops, Not Just a Job, gives an insight into a side of life most of us do not experience. It raises many issues, ethical, practical and psychological, which would be helpful for both serving and prospective police officers to discuss. So that's The Cops, Not Just a Job by Trevor Carroll, again under our biography section. So two very different experiences there that he's sharing with readers all across the world.
And 4 very different books. So there is something for everyone, surely, on Australian book lovers, and all written by Australian authors about so many different things.
Well, absolutely. And I thought I'd just do a very quick synopsis of a book called Colour of Greed by none other than author Gavin Fisher.
That saves me doing it. Good plan.
You had the pleasure of chatting with him. And this can be found under our mystery and suspense. So Colour of Greed, I love the way it starts. When Adelaide is rocked by an earthquake, no one is left more shaken than David Burrows. A recently completed apartment building suffers severe structural damage and collapses, leaving 26 people dead and countless injured. The building should never have collapsed and sparks a furor of condemnation by the press and public alike. David receives an alarming phone call from Alice Springs, where the steel used in the construction was manufactured, and the race is on across the country to uncover the truth. As the plot unravels, we learn that the failure of the structure is the result of something far more sinister. So Colour of Greed, yes, earthquakes in Adelaide, possible conspiracies, cross-country dashing. It sounds pretty damn cool.
And it was a fantastic chat. So, really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it.
And do you have any news for us today, Veronica?
I do have some news.
Yay!
And there was so much news I had to, calm myself down a bit and say, right, what is most important for people to have a little bit of a think about? So I did want to say that the New Zealand, the National Library of New Zealand, you might remember that they were going to donate 600,000 books into the Internet Archive. And of course, a lot of those books, the authors were still alive and still selling their books, and there was some, a great furor erupted about do they have the right to do that, and there was, copyright lawsuits and all that kind of thing. Well, they have actually suspended their planned Internet Archive donation amidst all this criticism. So good on them for listening to their writers, and what the statement says that they're reconsidering their plans in light of concerns raised by the various interested parties, including issues associated with copyright. So it's not going to export any of their collection until it's considered its options for the next step. So that's great. That was announced on the 29th of November, ahead of the 1st of December deadline for affected authors and publishers to opt out of the donation. And of course, lots of people were still not aware of it. So that was very good. And the other one that was quite interesting, so this is some information from Books and Publishing, which, as you know, we are members of, and so I encourage people who are interested in the books and publishing industry to jump on to get yourself a membership. Some great reading in there. And the conversation, I don't know if you're aware of that, but I became aware of that kind of from the other end. So coming from a science and medical background, the conversation is academic news and a culture website. So what I really loved was that it would take some scientific ideas and it would match the scientist with a journalist or a writer, and they would put together an article in, I'm going to say real human speak, but which really still presented all the scientific background, or in whatever it might be, medical or astronomy, whatever that is. So it's a really helpful website I've found, and I've often sort of pointed relatives or patients there, if they're wanting to have some more information about particular things, because it is based on science. However, they've launched a new books and ideas section. So they're expanding their books coverage with, they've appointed a new editor, and they're going to be reviewing local and overseas works, both new fiction and non-fiction. So shorter reviews, longer review essays, and various other literary themed content. So jump on to the Conversation website and have a squiz at that. So that will be very helpful. Final quick news is that the Indie Book Awards 2022 long lists have been announced. So that was announced on the 7th of December. And the Indie Book Awards are celebrating Australian literary talent. So, hey, perfect for us to have a chat about. And lots of great sponsors there, all of the people like Affirm Press, some of the independent booksellers, Hachette, Simon & Schuster, Text Publishing, Penguin Random House, etc. But the Indie Book Awards, established in 2008 with the aim of creating a unique award recognising and rewarding the best Australian writing as chosen by Australian independent booksellers. So the awards celebrate enormous depth and a range of literary talent in the nation. So it's great for authors to be represented or to be nominated here. It's good for readers to jump on and have a read of the ones that are chosen, even if you look at the long list. And there's, of course, lots of people in the long list. For example, I've read probably, one out of many of the of the groups. I'm going to have a go at saying Anita Heiss's Billa Yarradangalangare, which is River of Dreams in her Indigenous language, which is fantastic. I think Wiradjuri, excuse me, Anita, if I've put you into the wrong mob, but yeah, I read that a little while ago, so that was really good. So fiction, non-fiction, debut fiction, illustrated non-fiction, children's and young adult. So some great sections there. So have a look at the Indie Book of the Year, and the Indie Book of the Year last year, which, yes, I have read, is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, and that was published by Affirm Press. So, yeah, out there. And in fact, I think I've done a review of that one too. So,
and it's a great way to explore books if you're not sure what you want to read next.
Yes.
So contests like this with their list of possible winners is a great way. Just close your eyes, grab your finger, tap the screen, and see where it lands. You're guaranteed a good read, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So speaking of good read and earthquakes and planes and adventures, how was your chat with Mr. Gavin Fisher?
Well, let's just jump on in, because Gavin started writing when he was 12, and I love the story of how he got started. And look, we talk about research and Indigenous languages and opal mines, Darren.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's just jump in and hear what we talk about with, Gavin, who is the author of The Colour of Greed.
Absolutely, let's go.
And hello and welcome to our next author interview. And we have with us Gavin Fisher.
Hello, Veronica. At long last. It's been a while.
Yes, and we did take a little while to get organised, and it's lovely to actually begin speaking with you. Today I am coming from the land of the Wurundjeri people in Melbourne.
And we're from the Gold Coast to the Ugamba people.
Fantastic.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know that you've got some strong links on your website to the Rente people all about your book, because tell us a little bit about Colour of Greed.
Well, Colour of Greed sort of centres around the red centre of Australia, which is up Alice Springs way. And I was inspired when I went up there at Ayers Rock. Obviously the Uranti tribe was a bit further up on the other side, but that's where the inspiration came from. I did a bit of research and obviously learning about the cultures and the local people. Certainly did put me in good stead for the research in that book.
It's beautiful that all the area around Uluru and Katajuta and the Indigenous people are so generous with their knowledge about their culture and sharing and all of the things around there. I probably should have said to you, I can't think is the word, is it Palia? I think is the
Palia.
Palia,
Yes. Palia.
Yes, we did a beautiful experience with a couple of people up there, and that was just fantastic. Yeah, Palia, Victoria, although it has a different meaning. Wabanyaka, I think, is a welcome down here.
Okay. Yeah, Palia is the welcome up that side.
Yeah, very good. So many languages. We're here today, though, to talk a little bit about your writing language. So when did you first admit that you were a writer?
To be honest, I started writing when I was about 12 years old.
Ah, fantastic.
I got inspired bit of history. My father was a printer,
Mhm.
and I grew up with the smell of ink and in the print shops. And those are the days when the electric typewriters were just sort of coming into. And Dad threw out this old typewriter, which was an Underwood Standard. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, yes.
And I never had Dad a sticky esky. So as you type it, gave you this maul of hammers and shredded ribbon. And it was great fun, but I had a very well-developed sense of experience as far as reading stories go. And I imagine myself being a writer. And
Right. That's fantastic. To have that at 12 is brilliant.
And I got out to the first chapter, and I managed to find this some time back, and it was full of every single cliche you can imagine.
Well, can you remember the name of your first story?
It was actually called The Black Pearl.
Oh.
and that's long before
Disney.
Before Disney came out and Jack Sparrow and all of that.
Yeah.
But I gave it up eventually because those days there were no computers, and there was long hand writing out and then trying to type this thing out. And as my editor always mocks me and says, when I gave it up, the literary gods breathed a sigh of relief.
Oh, that's a bit cruel.
But yes, and then I years later, probably around about 2005, I had the urge to write again. And that stage, we were actually living in New Zealand. Yeah, I used to get up early hours of the morning, and the story suddenly just sort of sparked, and I just sat down and started typing away. I could say the defining moment is when I admitted to my wife, Caroline, that I was actually a writer. At that stage, I was a closet writer.
Right, very good.
And I figured, well, I'd better let her know what I was doing, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning on the computer. So sort of coming out of the closet, or if I'm allowed to say that, but it was quite an exhilarating experience, and admitting to her that yes, I'm actually writing a book. And she was obviously she was as thrilled as I was that I could actually sit down and do something like that.
That's fantastic. So tell me, you said something sparked that first moment when you had to sit down and write. What was the spark?
I often get asked by friends of mine who were sitting around dinner tables, so where do your stories come from? And your characters, where does what inspires it? And I always tell them it comes from, inspiration to me comes from anywhere. And as a writer, I would say you just got to be open to that. For me, I'm a visual person, so I might probably 9 out of 10 times it's something I've witnessed in the street, or of an image I've seen, or I've watched a movie, and something just sits in the back of your mind. I can only assume it was a doco or something up in Cooper Pedy, or seeing the mines, the opal mines and stuff that sort of sparked it. I sort of got to thinking, well, what happens when these people are being chased through the mines? And as it is then, David and his daughter Stacey are chased through the mine, and the story evolves from there. And I sort of just I don't plan at the end of the time, so but that was the spark of it. And then I just sat down and the story just developed from there.
Fantastic. When did Colour of Greed come out? When was it launched?
That was 2012.
Okay.
It won. I submitted it to the independent publishers. It won Independent Publishers Award in 2013 for Best Fiction Australia New Zealand.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I was quite chuffed with it.
Tell me what drew you to a thriller. Is that something that you've always read? Yes.
They always tell you if you're going on courses and learning the craft that you should write what you know. And it's a bit of a misnomer, because you can't, for instance, if you might be a nuclear physicist. It doesn't mean to say you're going to write about nuclear fission. But it's when they say write what you know, is if you enjoy reading thrillers or enjoy reading documentaries or something like that, that is what you know, as well as writing third person or first person. With the latest book, which is about to be launched now, called Double Death, I actually started writing in first person, because I had a one-on-one discussion with Michael Robotham once, and I asked him, because he writes first person, and I said, well, do you prefer first person or third person? And he says, well, he's never really considered writing third person, he just writes first person. So I sort of set a challenge for myself, and I thought, well, I'm going to try this in first person. And I hit a brick wall. About halfway through, I couldn't do anymore. So when you say, that's what you know, that's same as thrillers. I enjoy reading thrillers. Other books as well, documentaries or a bit of non-fiction.
Yeah.
But it's what I enjoy, and that's what I write.
Genres tend to have a particular tropes that people love or hate, and I know you mentioned that you're the early one at every cliche you can imagine was in your very first story when you were 12, which is fine. But tell me, what are the tropes in thriller that you absolutely love, and I think sometimes that's the familiarity, isn't it, that we like to see those come up and go, I know where this is going, and it gives us a degree of comfort, but also the skill of the writer to take us somewhere different. Yes.
Reading for me, and the same as writing, is about escapism. There's so much terrible stuff going on around us today. Even now COVID has made it even worse. For me, writing itself and getting and sitting down and actually the work itself is my escapism. I go into a different world, and I would say that's what I want for my readers as well, is to basically sit down and enjoy the book. And if I can take them to that space where they've actually forgotten about their mortgages, or how they're going to pick the kids up from school, or all of anything, I've made them relax for that second, then I've achieved what I wanted. So for me, fiction writing and reading fiction is about escape. The writer must take you to that other place, that where your imagination takes over and you forget about the present.
Your book starts in Adelaide.
Yes.
So I'm mentioning this because, of course, our co-author Darren is from over there. So have you been to Adelaide, and what do you think?
I'll be very honest, no. I've obviously researching through to Alice Springs and up that way. Yes, I was there, but with Adelaide, no. I had to start it somewhere.
It had to be the launching place.
I had to be the launching place.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's where your research comes in. Google Maps is a wonderful thing.
Very good. Yes.
But also, you're looking at images, and you're going through all sorts of literature to see the surroundings, and you put something together. And that's. And of course, as a fiction writer, you're writing from your imagination. That saying, show, don't tell. And any writer will say to you, you show, don't tell. And I often got asked at one stage, why don't I write about the Gold Coast? And the answer was quite simple, because I know it too intimately.
Right.
And I'm actually going to show people. I'm not going to tell them. So that's where you need to do it. So the show bit is, because I didn't know Adelaide intimately, I could use my imagination. I think that's what transports the other people as well.
So you could imagine it at the same time.
I could imagine it at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, very good. Tell us a little bit about how much research you do. You mentioned you'd done some travels through the centre, up through Uluru and Katajuda, etc.
Yes.
So how much of that research was done before the story, and how much afterwards? After that first draft, not afterwards completely, of course.
Okay, when I do my first draft, I actually don't do a huge amount of research. You can bog yourself down with research and get stuck in the groove, and your creative juices sort of stall. I would, for the brief sort of outline of the story, I might do a little bit of research, like Adelaide, to find an odd street name or get a feeling for the area, and then I'd write. The same sort of with Alice Springs and the outlying areas. The Overlander Steakhouse in Alice Springs, which unfortunately is no longer there. Obviously, through my research, I got to know the owner of it, and he was a tremendous help. He actually appears by name in Colour of Greed as the Overlander. So I got his permission. He said, by all means, just don't make me a villain. And I said, no.
Yes, that's something, isn't it? We can kill off or make them nasty.
Yeah, and he said afterwards, I did him justice. I did the original justice, which was good. And unfortunately, it's no longer there.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of research you get into at the stage where you are going through your first draft, you finished it, and you do your first edit.
Mm-hmm.
So I try not to get bogged down too much, but obviously, you need to get the story to flow.
Mm. Would it be fair to say that you're a pantser rather than a plotter, right by the seat of your pants to begin?
Okay.
It's all right. You're talking to a pantser here, so that we're good.
Okay. You better explain to the listeners what a pantser is before they offend me.
There you go. So a pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants, as
That's right.
Gavin has just very eloquently described. The story pours out, and that first draft, you just get it down on paper. And then you go back and you might restructure it, you might research it, you might introduce new characters, but that first dump almost is just the imagination exploding onto the page. If you're a plotter, you might take offence at Gavin's comment that you don't do much research, because you might spend 18 months researching and do all of that so that it's almost written itself, and you just have to fill in the flesh around the skeleton. Yeah, and so it's everything in between. Some people are a little bit of both, and I think
a little bit of both.
Yeah,
everyone's different, and I suppose your writing craft is you, and that's what makes us as a writer unique.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly our experience makes it unique, doesn't it? So you've done a lot of travel, so South Africa, New Zealand, lots of different parts of Australia. How much do you think your experience has contributed to the writing? For example, let's just look at Colour of Greed.
Probably not a lot. As I said, I started my writing at age 12 when I was in South Africa. We left there in 2001, and I lived in New Zealand for going on close on 8 years in Christchurch, and that's where I started writing seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, one of the characters in Colour of Greed is an ex-South African mercenary. I drew a little bit about that. I could imagine the character. In fact, when I was doing military service, I came across people like that, so I could draw from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it has changed my way of writing. Coming to us, in fact, Colour of Greed was written, the full first draft was written out of Christchurch, New Zealand, and it was actually based in Australia. The cultures, one has to adapt to the culture itself. If you're writing, if I was writing a story based around New Zealand, I'd obviously have to almost change my way of thinking and write for that culture. And it would at this stage probably take a lot more research than obviously writing something based in Australia.
Fair enough. So tell me, you just mentioned, going back to being a child again, what were your favourite books as a child?
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn.
Some classics. Mark
Twain. I've actually got it on my shelf over here.
Very good.
All these years. It's probably what inspired me. If you ever get a chance to read it, or any of the listeners get a chance to read it, his writing is amazing. It's graphic, and you can picture it. And it's really good. And you can see these scoundrels, what they get up to. And that's probably what sort of got me going. I'd hope so, for your sake.
There you go. I have 5 brothers, and lots of them were a bit naughty, and of course I wasn't. I was an angel. So I remember reading about them, thinking, "Really, these are just like my brothers. What are they thinking now?" And they weren't all that bad. I'd take that back. Tell me then. I'm just thinking about how you turned to writing as a routine, and you mentioned getting up at 4 o'clock, being a morning writer myself. Tell me a little bit about your routine. What's your process for writing?
Nowadays, I've now worked 4 days a week, so I now have Fridays off. So I've managed to get at least a day and a half in every week.
Fantastic.
And I get, I would say, probably two early mornings. I'll get up before work and do a bit of writing then. Routine is important when you write, as you yourself will know. Even if you're not going to write, I still get up. Like this morning, I'd get up and just potter around really, but it's just to keep that routine going, and it's the mind takes over in the background saying, okay, well, this is your time, sort of.
Yes, yeah. A really important part of writing is staring into space a lot, thinking about what you want to do.
Well, Caroline, that's my wife, often says, you've got that look in there. And she knows I'm not listening to her.
Yeah, we're very lucky. You need to have very understanding spouses or partners. Yeah. And really, it's difficult sometimes for people who are not writers to know that all of these thoughts are going on in your brain. So how important is it for you to be connected with a writing community?
It's extremely important. When I wrote the first draft for Colour of Creed, I'll be honest, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I knew I was writing a story, and in my heart I felt it was good, and I had a great idea, and it was what you'd understand, or any of the listeners who are writers would understand. It's a magical moment when it just starts flowing. The words and the characters seem to pop out of the page, and all you're doing is they're talking behind your head over here, and you're just typing away, which is it's an amazing feeling. It's almost euphoric. That's basically where it comes from.
Tell me, you joined tell me about your time with the Gold Coast Writers Association. You were president for a little while.
We digressed there slightly.
We did, that's all right.
So getting back to a support base. So we came, when I arrived here, as I said, I was a novice writer, if I want to call that. I looked around for like-minded people, and I came across the Gold Coast Writers Association. Now, they've been going for just 20 years. And I walked in there not knowing anyone really, and they these sort of associations, and there are many of them around the country, are great to meet up with and join, because you learn a lot. And everyone's there to help and advise. No one's there to say, well, I'm a published author and you're not a published author, sort of thing. And that's what I found with the Gold Coast Writers. And that's where I met my first publisher, which is Andy from Publishers, who published Colour of Creed first. And they help you through the process. I was on the committee for 5 years, and as its president for 2. And it's vital that you go to the workshops, and it carries you along, because writing is a very lonely process. And as you well know, you can sit and write in your little office or wherever you're writing and not communicate with anyone. And you need that out, and you need your support base around you, and like-minded people, and you feed off one another as well, which is obviously a good thing.
Yeah. How, in the time that are you still with the Gold Coast Writers, by the way?
Yes, I'm still. The Constitution basically says that you can't be a president for longer than 2-year period in a row. I'm no longer on the committee. As my writing is now taken over from that point. But I'm still a member. I still attend once a month. We'll meet up and do workshops and guest speakers and whatnot.
I was wondering what changes you've noticed in that time since 2018. So what we're looking at, sort of 12, 15 years or so. What have you noticed has changed in writing and publishing, and I guess in the writing community in that time? Or have you? Technology,
firstly, has advanced a huge amount. The way you research has changed. Now you're writing on a little tablet. It's much more transportable. I would say where the biggest change has taken place is in the way the publishing fraternity as such has progressed. Both Colour of Creed and this one, Double Death, about to be released, are doing through assisted publishers. You get mainstream publishers, you get assisted publishers, you get self-publishing, basically, where you go on Amazon and you can do that sort of thing. But there are a lot more publishers around, and they become a lot more astute. as such. As Australian publishers seem to be quite out there as far as helping writers become published. So that has changed. Unless it's been around for quite a while, and I've just noticed recently, I'm now publishing through Ocean Reef Publishers. Yeah, the advancement is there, definitely.
Yeah. Do you think the audience has changed? Are they looking for different things to read, in your opinion, or different ways to read? Are there's technology
yes,
or anything in that?
As technology's come into it, you know, Double Death will now be taken into audiobook, which is now, it's a must. Eventually Colour of Greed will as well. But you've got your ebooks, and there's so many platforms now that people either read on their phones or on their tablets or Kindles. It's all there's different avenues you have to explore now, whereas you know, a lot of writers just entering the market now, or they haven't been published yet. So it's a huge field of expertise which they need to draw from.
Do you yourself write for a particular audience, or is it just the story for yourself?
Well, as I mentioned before, for me, it's about escapism. You know, I enjoy writing so that other people can enjoy my stories. You're never going to get rich writing. I mean, unless you James Patterson or one of these you know, mainstream authors. But the joy is getting your story out there so other people can get enjoyment out of it. That to me, that's your main goal.
Now, we've talked about Double Death a little bit, so you better tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay. The genesis of Double Death occurred in a nearby shopping centre.
Right.
I literally lost my wife, Caroline, down aisle 5.
Damn. I hope you found her again.
No, we did. It's a happy reunion. But you know, if you ever lose one another, if your spouse or partner, you lose one another in the shopping centre, you'll know what it's like.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm more likely to lose them in Bunnings.
And, yes, you can. No matter where you are, you're not going to find one another.
Yeah.
And that sparked the sort of idea for Double Death. And I sort of, you know, I've got an overactive imagination. I could think, oh, you know, where's Caroline? And that frustration and that angst I brought home, and I banged out the first chapter.
That's fantastic.
So then, as you say, you're doing research, and I thought, and I know Gold Coast too well. I thought, no, well, where can I base the story? And I thought, well, it's based down in Sydney.
Very good, very good.
And it's got it's got all the places I need down in Sydney, and it's so that basically Double Death is about family, and the lengths people go to protect it or destroy it. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, that one. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's now into its final proofread. It's been formatted, and we're ready to roll probably in about a month or two. And
fantastic.
We'll be launching.
That's brilliant. Who designed your cover? Because I love the cover of The Colour of Greed. That's fantastic. And of course, I haven't seen Double Death, but is it the same?
No.
No? Different?
Yeah, Darren down, he's retired, unfortunately. He designed it. When you work, if you're working with a mainstream publisher, like Hatchet or Allen Unwin, basically they'll take over and they'll do the cover design. Now, when you're self-publishing or assisted publishing, you've got a choice. You can give it to your assisted publisher, like Ocean Reef Publishing. They will do the design for your cover. On the other hand, are pretty particular as to what I want.
Yeah.
So yes, with Colour of Greed, I had an idea, put it across to Darren. I researched, obviously, and he'd done a lot of mainstream published covers and stuff. So I gave him an idea, and it's a bit backwards and forwards, and eventually we arrived at that sort of on the cover. That's what I wanted. With Double Death, same thing. I sent one of the scenes of the book, which is the second chapter, where Angie's kidnapped and she's chained to a bed. So that's I sent him that. Well, there were two of them. There's Michael as a photographer down in Sydney, and there's a a graphic designer here on the Gold Coast, and I sent the two of them my ideas, and they came out. It was brilliant.
Fantastic.
They did a bit to and fro, and eventually they nailed it.
It's good. You've got to be happy because that is the entry to your story, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the main part of when you're going on to, for anyone who's going to be designing a book cover, you must remember that you're out there with thousands of other book covers.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing your reader's going to see is the face of your book. Then they flip it over. And they read the back.
That's right. If the cover gets them in, they'll read the blurb. If the blurb gets them in, chances are you might get a sale.
They'll open the first page and have a look.
Yeah.
Yes. But covers are extremely important when it comes to marketing a book.
Yeah. So what would you say to people who are thinking about reading or looking for their next thriller? Why should they read your book?
I write, as I said, it's about escapism. It's about it's fiction, and it's real fiction. It's something I don't write about superhero or a GI Joe that's going to mow everyone down with a machine gun or whatever. I write about everyday people. In Color of Greed, it's David is an engineer. It's all the hurdles get thrown at him and the people that try and kill him, and the obstacles he has to overcome, and that's what I write about. Same thing here with Chris and Angie. There are various obstacles that are thrown at them, and it could happen. And I think that's the beauty of the way I write. You can read the story and think, oh, if that happened to me, how would I handle it?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And I think people enjoy feeling or seeing themselves in stories, even if it might be, this will never happen to me, as you say, but it could.
It could.
If they can,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I do. Some people might like superheroes, but that's all right. We're not talking about them today.
I've got nothing against superheroes or anything like that. But as I say, read what you enjoy and read what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind, about coming back to writing. So let's think about marketing. So what have been your most successful marketing things in terms of getting Color of Greed into people's hands?
Okay, marketing is probably one of the most important parts of the book. You can write the book, you can do a great cover, but your books are just going to sit in your garage. They're not going to go anywhere. I've learned a lot with Color of Greed. As I said, I was a novice, I didn't know much. You got to go out there, do your book signings, get yourself known. The actual book itself is not a brand. You as an author is the brand. And you've got to keep on at it. You've got to have a media presence. You've got to have Facebook. You've got to be on Twitter as a fictional writer specifically. You've got to have all these platforms. You've got to remain active on them. And book signings is one of the critical things to do. And go out there and market yourself as such.
You do have to be out there. It is really, the writing is just the first part, isn't it?
It is, yes. and there's, it might sound like I'm punting Ocean Reef Publishing, but they've got marketing strategies, and that's one of the reasons why I've moved over to them.
Yeah.
And they got a plan in place which they put it across to you, and it's up to you to drive it, obviously.
Yes, yeah, but it gives you some frameworks.
It gives you a framework to work.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. It seems as though you are a fairly positive sort of person. So you gave us some information about what your motto would be. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a positive sort of person, as you say. And instead of my glass being half empty, my glass is always half full. Yeah. That's right. And in fact, I always say to people, when your glass is half empty or half full, you must always remember there's another bottle of wine in the fridge.
I like that. That is a very good idea. Very good idea. And what about if you were to have a last meal? What would it be?
It's easy. Lamb chops and mash. Just the way my wife makes it. Nice caramel, lamb chops and mash. Round it off with a glass of Merlot.
Well, you've just made Caroline very happy. She's just had her cooking, out on a national podcast, so that's great. Very good. Or any sort of final words for writers?
Everyone's got a story in them. Whether you're writing from your personal experience, if you're going to write a book, whether it's a vanity book that just want to give your family or as sort of leave as a legacy, or whether it's a piece of fiction, just start writing. And if you are writing, and just don't get, you're going to hit a stumbling block where you're going to think, oh, I just can't do this anymore. I don't feel like, just keep going. Day after day, just write. Even if you write one sentence, it's not money isn't what drives us. As I said earlier, you're not going to get rich. It's the fact that you're actually going to be writing and someone's going to be enjoying your story. Give it out. That's what it is.
Just good. And escaping, finding somewhere that, as you say, is not picking up the kids or worrying about the mortgage.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's about giving joy to someone else.
That's fantastic. So where can people find you online?
Probably your biggest draw is your website. You can find me on gavinfisher.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. That's at Gavin F, or my official Facebook page, which is Gavin Fisher Author.
Very good.
Probably the easiest would be just to go onto the website and follow the links from there.
Yep, see all the bits and pieces there. Very good. Thank you so much
for
sharing all of the inspiration and the processes and all of those things. It's really lovely to have you on the interview today.
The pleasure's been mine, Veronica. It's been lovely. Nice
Very
talking
good.
to you.
All right. Take care, and we will look forward to seeing Double Death on the website very soon.
Absolutely.
Lovely. All right. Take care.
And thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye for now. So there you go. Thriller, mystery, starts in Adelaide, gets all over Australia. And, we talked about messy first draft. So, yeah, a fantastic chat with Gavin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gavin, for being part of the podcast. Amazing. And, and inspiring, such cool thoughts of adventure and mystery and drama across, such a vast landscape, which has so many different avenues of exploration. So, yeah, definitely adventures and across Australia. It's never going to be a boring thing. No. And it sounds like he's quite adventurous himself, from South Africa to New Zealand to Gold Coast.
Yep. For sure. And look, I'm just interested to take up about the messy first draft, because I think when readers get a book and it's fantastic and it's, just it immerses you into their world or the mystery or whatever it might be, they don't always realise that might be draft 22 or 16 or whatever, because a writer will often go through so many drafts, and that kind of messy first draft where everything just falls out onto the page, there's a lot of work between that and the book that you turn the pages of that you get in your Christmas present. So how many drafts do you think you do on average for your books, Darren?
Ooh, well, it depends, because I'm constantly rewriting as I go, as far as, for a page, or I'll muse or contemplate certain sections that I've done, so that when I get back to work, it may be that I'll just go in there with a scalpel, just so that I can continue from my new vantage point. And then, of course, the editing. So I've never really counted the drafts, but it'd be many. But I think for book lovers out there that maybe well, I wouldn't say unaware, but an easy way to visualise the kind of work that's involved, like in any art, really. I mean, you think about some of the great pieces of, paintings and stuff like that. You see that finished product in a beautiful frame, and it's lit perfectly in a gallery. But what we don't often see is the hundreds, maybe thousands of sketches, trials, concepts, different mediums using until they settle on what medium is going to be. So there's all that work there, and it's even an easier way to sort of get an idea of what an organic process it is, especially with today's technology and the internet and YouTube and all that jazz, is try and find a song that is so very well, perhaps one of your favourite artists. And a lot of artists now are actually releasing, or it gets out there, a demo recordings. So something where they've just basically, thinking the song out loud in the studio. And it is absolutely amazing when you hear a version of a song that you just, perhaps grown up with, and you hear how it was originally written at the time.
Yes.
Like the rough draft, so to speak, and you go,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so you know that a whole heap has happened since that first trial, and let's just have a quick shot and see what it sounds like, to that final product you get on the album. Is a huge thing. So the same thing with paintings, and it's exactly the same thing with writing. So it is. There's so much work. Art is, I guess, the final product is always beautiful, but it's a big mountain to climb for a lot of artwork. And so you're definitely getting good value for money as a reader, because you're getting content that has got so much passion behind it that a person will go through as many drafts as possible to make sure that the product you have in your hand, when you enjoy the adventure or the read, that the author's done everything they can to make sure it's the best possible experience you can have.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And look, there's a really great excerpt from the book Bird by Bird, which is written by Anne Lamott. She's an American author, and this is a book that I've read. But there's an excerpt that is often shared in academic circles and those kind of things, and it's called, Shitty First Drafts by Anne Lamott. And she talks about just getting it out there, because it was a quote originally made famous by, what's his name? Hemingway, of course, who said, the first draft of anything is shit. So there you go. And, you'd have to be right, because for me, it just absolutely pours out. And then when I go back to look at that second draft, I think, oh dear, I can't do the editing in the first draft, because otherwise I start second guessing myself and just, get myself into a whole lot of mess and going around in circles. So I usually just pour out the first draft, and then I end up going back and chopping, changing, and getting, really messy with that. But I'm interested in the Bird by Bird, because it was something that her father taught her when she was, I think, learning about birds. I can't remember the exact story, but basically it's, one small step at a time, and just making that as perfect as you can. And it kind of got me thinking about sort of elements that make a good thriller, because that was what Gavin is writing, mystery and thriller. And I know we've got our mystery and thriller, which will get released one day when we get ourselves organised. And I'm also been judging, so here's all the segues in my brain going, been judging the science fiction, self-published science fiction contest. And one of the books I've been reading is it is a dystopian world, but it's actually a mystery. So I thought, what is it that makes a good thriller mystery? What is it that puts it in one or the other? And I found that there's a blog by W.H. Smith Co. in the UK, which are the big booksellers, and they've got 10 elements that make a good thriller. So I want to see if you agree with these. Number one, it's a good story. There has to be a strong sense of dread in any thriller. So I thought, yeah, okay.
That's a given.
Yep. It has to have an action-packed opening chapter. So it sets the pace. It should be tense and compelling. So I think, yeah, all right, I agree with that one. There has to be a likeable protagonist. And there's maybe. So the reader should warm to the main character quickly and be able to identify with him or her. If you don't feel sympathy or connection, then maybe not. There is kind of a school of thought that the anti-hero is kind of, coming up there. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. Number 4, multiple points of view. This isn't the case with all thrillers. So majority of thrillers are written in the third person with shifting points of view, and it adds sort of, interest and complexity. So I'm not sure. What do you feel about multiple points of view?
Well, I think that's an author's choice, really. Yeah. And for me, I'm thinking for a thriller, yeah. For a mystery, not so much.
Not so much, yeah, because you really want to keep them guessing, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Number 5, cliffhangers. Yeah. Definitely. Each chapter should end with the ultimate cliffhanger, leaving the reader crying out, just one more. A stunning shock or a confession or a twist or something like that. So, yeah.
I think so, yeah. You just got me, first thing to think of course, of all things, is the original Batman series. Will Batman get out? Find out. Same bat time.
Same bat channel.
But I think that was the simplest version of that concept that's ever been, I think.
Yeah. And how can we imagine that he wouldn't? But anyway, yeah, you often did.
I know. Yeah.
All right, number 6 is the ticking clock. thrillers often have a race against time aspect to them, so something that adds to the suspense and
Definitely,
fuels
yeah.
the reader's adrenaline rush. I thought, yeah, that's good. I like those. And I'm thinking, what's the one where the pathologist, Patricia Cornwell, she writes the great gruesome, the serial killer ones, and yeah, often there was a ticking clock because you wanted her to save the next person, but anyway, they're good. Number 7, a world-class nasty villain. The antagonist needs to be determined and as clever as the protagonist, utterly immoral, terrifying and nasty at the same time.
It depends. I think for myself, I'm thinking, well, yes, but then that's going cartoon mode.
Yeah.
As far as, well, not cartoon, but I guess, trying to, find a diamond amongst cliches. But, the antagonist could be so many different things now. Especially as, I think we all find, the bad person that has something that we can relate to, I think is more interesting. And so that it's not so black and white, that it's all grey. But, again, depends
They're
on the
redeemable,
tone
aren't
of
they?
the
Yeah,
story.
I think we like that now. Yeah. Okay, last 3. Number 8 is character growth. And for me, this is any book. But, a thrill is always better if the main character becomes mentally stronger as the story unfolds, showing some sort of victory against his or her personal demons. So, yeah, I think absolutely. Number 9, teach us something. And perhaps not the first thing that you'd imagine is in a thriller, but, this list says that while they're not looking for information overload, a good thriller should always teach the reader something that can go away feeling more informed on a subject, whether that's a social issue or a medical treatment. Yeah, there you go. So some real facts in there is what they're suggesting. And then finally, understandably, an epic ending. A good thriller always has an epic ending that will blow your mind, one that'll stay with you for days, if not weeks, after reading the final page.
No, I think that's a pretty on point list, definitely.
Yeah, so that was quite good. So yes, at blog.whsmith.co.uk, and then I started to get sucked into a whole lot of other bits and pieces, but that's all right. Nice
I think I think pacing really for me is the dividing line, or dividing line, maybe the razor blade line between thriller, action and suspense.
Yep.
Or mystery, shall we say? Because action is what cracking pace, and I think a thriller is still a cracking pace, but is starting to also incorporate just that little bit of mystery that can be have a thread pulled on the run, so to speak.
Yes.
Whereas a mystery you can use all the time in the world. And the timing isn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be a pace because it may be spread across a generation or two.
Yes.
A good mystery. So but all of them I think are an exercise in discovery and perhaps drawing the reader into a world they didn't know existed, or the character didn't know existed, and find themselves faced with, and that's that whole sense of adventure that comes with taking the journey with the character.
That's good. Now, before we jump into quotes, one thing I did forget to mention is, of course, the Conversation's website, as I mentioned before. So the Conversation, their byline is academic rigour, journalistic flair. So it's theconversation.com/au. So, have a bit of a look at that.
So are you saying that we've still got journalists left in Australia?
Well, there are some politics, but there's also arts and culture and those kind of things. For example, there's this is the kind of thing which is, you've got to have a bit of a look. But we counted 20 billion ticks of an extreme galactic clock to give Einstein's theory of gravity its toughest test yet. So you can read that one, or you can read about buying picture books as Christmas presents. These stories with diverse characters can help kids develop empathy. So that's Helen Joanne Adam from Edith Cowan University has written that one. So I would certainly have got that on my list to have a little bit of a look for later.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a pretty cool website.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Sorry, just want in case people were wondering where it is. There you go.
Yeah, good point.
So quotes, Darren.
Yes.
Hit me with your first quote.
Well, I've got 2 quotes, obviously, but Yeah, the first one I wanted to do something to do with a little bit of adventure.
Yep.
So we'll start with that one. And this is by a gentleman by the name of Eric Roth. Again, my research not up to scratch. I find these great quotes, but I always neglect for some reason to look into the person who was so kind enough to bring it into the world. But this quote is, "I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things you never felt before. I hope you meet people with a different point of view. I hope you live a life you're proud of. If you find that you're not, I hope you have the strength to start all over again." Eric Roth, so about travelling and adventure. So, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Nice one.
The confidence to say, okay, just start over again if it's not happening this time.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of like messy first drafts. If it's really bad, chuck it out, do it again.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
I've had many aspects of my life that would definitely go in the basket as a messy first draft, or as Hemingway would say, a shitty first draft.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
some serious editing needed on this soul, but I'll work on that another day. What about your quotes?
Well, I kind of went the other way. I had some quotes about drafts, and I had one from Stephen King. I'm just going to tell you this one anyway, but this is a freebie. It doesn't count.
Oh, okay.
Good books don't give up all their secrets at once. That's a Stephen King. And I thought, well, that really fits with the mystery and thriller. So, yeah, there you go. But my two quotes today are from Jasper Fforde. So he's a British writer, and he writes humour, and it's I just love it. It's in that fantastic self-deprecating style that a lot of Brits have. They're mostly for readers, because I figured, well, we often do stuff for writers as well. So this is from The Well of Lost Plots by Jasper Fforde. Books may look like nothing more than words on a page, but they are actually an infinitely complex imagino-transference technology that translates odd, inky squiggles into pictures inside your head.
Yes. Which is kind of similar to Stephen King in his On Writing, where he basically says, you know, it's actually it's a form of magic, isn't it?
It
Going from one
absolutely
line to
is
another.
when you think about it, yeah.
But yes, I love that. The squiggly ink. And
Yeah,
it's actually
pictures inside your head.
Yeah. And not only that, you know, sometimes I look down, you know, when I'm reading a book and, you know, you can just for a moment not recognise the symbols. So in other words, like, don't read it as words, but look at it as just pure symbols on this page. And you think, wow, you know, what a thing to have, like, the written language in any language, but just to see, you know, for sort of, I don't know, switch your viewpoint for a second and just look at it all, like it says squiggles or in this case typed symbols that actually ignite your imagination, get in there and paint endless pictures and gives you emotions. And it's I like it. It's a good thing, the old letters and words.
It absolutely is. And you have segued me. I'm going to just leap in and go straight with my second quote, also from Jasper Fforde, because it just is perfect from what you said. Reading is arguably a far more creative and imaginative process than writing. When the reader creates emotion in their head, or the colours of the sky during the setting sun, or the smell of a warm summer's breeze on their face, they should reserve as much praise for themselves as they do for the writer, perhaps more.
Oh, what a cool quote.
Yeah, how good is that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's in The Well of Lost Plots. Yeah, really good. Give us your second one.
That book sounds like, is it something similar to, what was the other Australian one about the lost words?
Oh, the Dictionary of Lost Words, yes. Yeah, so Jasper Fforde's a speculative fiction. So The Well of Lost Plots is a library. There's a literary detective called Tuesday Next, and she investigates crime in fiction and non-fiction in books. It's really good. And The Well of Lost Plots is where lost plots go. But you can buy plot devices. And a plot device might be a shot rang out. And so if your story's, you know, not doing very well, you can then buy a plot device and throw it in and away it goes. It is very funny. It's clever, and if you read a lot, then you will really enjoy it. This particular series starts with the Eyre affair, where they change the ending of Jane Eyre to be what it is now. So imagine what it was beforehand. So yeah, you've got to go in and know some of your classic books and some of the detectives, like they get together, they meet at one of the parks, not from Pride and Prejudice, from one of the other books, and they're in a meeting and they're going, who are we waiting for? Oh, we're waiting for Godot, which of course is another book. So Godot is one of their detectives who's got lost somewhere and lost. But anyway, I could go on forever.
Well, it sounds like you enjoyed it, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah, it is very fun. I haven't read them for a while. Might be good to reread. Anyway, give us your second quote.
Yeah, so my second quote is by a gentleman by the name of Doug Stanhope, and it is actually, I guess, about conspiracy theories, considering that's part of the Gavin Fisher's book. So it is, I love conspiracy theories. I used to just live on it. It's all hype and garbage, but you're still really paranoid afterwards. It's fun. It's fun entertainment.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. Look, conspiracy theories abound, and I think with the internet and the globalization of communication and those kind of things, that conspiracy theories have found themselves a very willing audience to jump into it, and some of them have enough fact in them to really take off.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because a good conspiracy theory, I mean, I think deep down, I can speak for myself. I mean, I love a good conspiracy theory. And just like that quote, even some of it I know is absolute rubbish, but I still love it because I think, I love seeing how they try and, make 1 and 1 3 and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a weird, well, you can't call it a genre, but it's not fact, it's not fiction. It's its own thing, really, isn't it? Like a good conspiracy book is written as though it's, fact and non-fiction. But, well, depending on the conspiracy, of course, there's some there that could be true. But, the real ridiculous ones, that just can't possibly be true. And yet it's so interesting to read how these people either do believe the lies they're telling themselves, or is it a bit of a troll from an author, but I don't know where those books fit. Like, do they have, is conspiracy just a genre in itself?
I don't know. We'd have to have a look and see what Amazon are up to. Yeah. And, my mum would have said they were drawing a very long bow. So, that I think having, as I've mentioned, worked in the health sector and seen the way statistics can be interpreted in so many different ways, just from numbers on a page, but the story behind it, the story that you tell yourself, the story that you tell, whoever you're trying to influence, can be taken in so many different ways that it's easy to see how people can be, sucked in by someone with a degree of confidence about what they're presenting and stringing all these little threads together to make a story. So, yeah.
What do they say? There's lies, damn lies, and then statistics.
I'd agree with that. There you go. Very good.
So, how do you think our tagline should be today?
Well, maybe there needs to be some spooky, owls or mysteries, some fog type things happening, or the hoot of a boat out on the, the misty river.
Wondering how we can do that.
I think that's after editing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just wondering how our voices would be. I'll think of something to do with machines and mystery.
Or a shot rang out. You could do a shot rang out as a plot device.
Or shall we? Because it's a bit of a gallivanting adventure, isn't it?
True.
So should we do us as co-pilots on a small aircraft?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I might let you take the lead on that one. But don't forget, listeners, that if you did enjoy the episode, please leave us a star or a comment on your favourite podcasting platform. And we're on iTunes and Spotify and Google and all of those kind of platforms. If you're looking for the website, of course, it's www.australianbooklovers.com. You can find us on Twitter at Australian Books. Jump in and join the conversation. And on Facebook and Instagram at Australian Book Lovers, where you'll find links to the podcast and our latest releases and features of the week and all of those kind of things.
Indeed.
Yes.
So now, I guess, it's time to... I'm no good at introducing the tagline.
All right, so Take care for now, and remember to
Read
more
Aussie
Aussie
books.
books.
Over and out.
Gotcha. Roger.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye for now. Skalsinger, Book 2 of the Chronicles of Algarth by L.A. Webster, is a brilliant follow-up to the beautifully lyrical Green Halen. Again in this story, I felt like I was coming home. The style and flow of language is classic fantasy at its best. But there is so much action and so many twists, so many completely unexpected events. Nothing was as it initially seemed. Webster kept turning the story out of the ordinary, and that keeps the pages turning. The roller coaster ride for the characters made it a roller coaster for the readers. I was pleased to see some cameos from some of the Book 1 characters, but this book very much stands complete on its own. Themes of grief, power, conspiracy, loyalty, and betrayal are woven together to create murky, realistic, and flawed characters. We see them in subtle grey rather than black and white, good and bad. So human. Kahira, Niall, and Perna are an odd mix that perfectly travels the troubled world of Algarth. The world building continues to be a strong element of Webster's writing, and she has deepened the magical system with another unique set of scars. A great read for lovers of fantasy.
Let's meet again. When magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community, and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.